And welcome to the Survival Report Podcast. The Survival Report Podcast, available also on our YouTube channel at survivalreport.net. Survivalreport.net, as always, hosted by our good friends at survivalandpreparedness.com. Survivalandpreparedness.com, one of the leading forums for quality survival and preparedness information on the web. Survivalandpreparedness.com, sponsored in part by our good friends at the North Georgia Coal Mullen Society. The North Georgia Coal Mullen Society and the Central Florida Coal Mullen Society, the Central Florida Coal Mullen Society, and as always, by our friends at jrhenterprises.com, jrhenterprises.com, with 21 real years in the preparedness business, selling only the finest in, quality U.S. night vision, thermal detectors, thermal imaging devices, seismic intrusion detections devices, as well as various other perimeter alarms, long-term storage foods, Katahdin water filters, medical kits, survey meters, might come in very handy here pretty soon as things begin to heat up in the Middle East, gas masks, etc., etc., etc. Check them out on the web at jrhenterprises.com. And take note of the coupon code 10ON50. That entitles you to $10 off any order of $50 or more. If you do the math on a small order, it's a 20% discount. On a $50 order, it's a 20% discount. Pretty decent discount, especially on smaller orders. People tell me, oh, you always run sales on large ticket items. Well, there's a little bit more margin sometimes in large ticket items than there is in some of the smaller ticket items. So there is another way to save. Again, a coupon code of 10ON, the numeral 50. Okay? 10 on 50 is what it spells out to be, using the numbers for the 10 and the 50. Anyway, jrhenterprises.com, as always, bringing you the best in survival and preparedness supplies. Coming up in November, the Life Changes Be Ready Expo in Lakeland, Florida. You can find out more information by clicking on the ad at the forums at survivalandpreparedness.com. They had a show in January down in DeLand, Florida, that was excellent. These promoters really know what they're doing. They're very responsive to both attendees and vendors and speakers. A lot of new startups out there for shows. A lot of them don't know what they're doing. These folks do. Cindy Thompson and her husband, and they're quality folks, and I'll stick with them as long as they'll have me. And I'll be there speaking. Our good friend David, Southern Prepper 1, he'll be there speaking as well, and a lineup of whole other amounts of speakers as well. I think she's got Jim Rawls lined up again via teleconference type thing as well from Survival Blog in the book Patriots, Surviving the Coming Collapse. Excellent show, again, coming up in November in Lakeland, Florida. The Life Changes Be Ready Expo. And again, to find out more information, follow the link from the forum on the ads at the forums at survivalandpreparedness.com. survivalandpreparedness.com. A big thanks to all the folks that came out and saw us at the Dalton, Georgia Social Prepper Expo here a few weekends back. kind of a small show, not very well organized, things like that. But nevertheless, it's always to see familiar faces and meet some new friends and all that good stuff as well too. So we always enjoy that, even if it's a small show and everything as well. All right, getting back into the swing of things here, and this is an extremely busy time of year for us, both for all three of our businesses. Plus, it's homesteading heavy time of the year. Our main harvest period is all crunched into a very short period of time in the summer. So, literally, as we're wrapping up school for the year, bada bing, bada boom, it's time to get out there and start harvesting beans and start harvesting tomatoes and corn and yada, 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 yada. So this is, there's a little lag between podcasts here lately. Bear with me. We're literally up to our eyeballs in produce. But that's what you do. That's where self-reliance comes in. So no beach balls usually in in our summer. Usually our summer revolves around about a month straight of work of bringing in the harvest and all that good stuff, and then a little bit of time to play later in the summer. Such is the life of a homesteader. So it is what it is. We've been talking the last few times about survival retreat setup, survival retreat layout. We got into some of the different types or styles, for lack of a better term, of commonly seen in survival retreats and things like that. Talk a little bit more about that. We discussed briefly last time the hide type approach, what I call the hide, which is just basically used in the context of, if you've been in the military or any sort of thing like that, of like a laying up position of an overnight or a RON type type position, wherein there really isn't much or anything put into defenses. Maybe there's some early warning devices put out and things like that, but hide is in the context of a survival retreat is usually set up to be essentially as absolutely covert and absolutely nondescript as possible. All right, that in itself creates some problems, creates some drawbacks to that approach. Yes, we need to keep things on the down low. Yes, we need to keep things as covert as possible. No arguments there whatsoever. People kind of don't get what I mean by this, so I give an example of a hide that I encountered at a group in a far away land and a long time ago that I was brought in to consult and to do some training for a few years back. This larger group, very well known to each other, was part of another organization for approximately 30-year time period. So very well established, not an ad hoc thrown together at the last minute type group or any sort of things like that. Not 4 or 5 preppers that met on the internet and had grandiose dreams of all buying property together and the little fantasy like that. This was a ready and established group of people, just necessarily not organized as a survival group initially. Anywho, there was when the first year I went up there, there was essentially just 1 or 2 dwellings on the structures on the land, and it was a fairly large chunk of land. So you literally drove in on the unimproved road and everything, or little improved road. We'd call them on a map. You'd call it an unimproved road anyway, because it doesn't have asphalt. Anyway, and it just kind of dead ended, and you parked there. And I think there was a little small shed or something right there. Anyway, there was a small trail that, it was semi well worn, but never looked like anything larger than perhaps a bicycle, had went down it. And it was, in the mountains, so there was a lot of switchbacks, and you'd go down and you'd go back up and all that good stuff. Well, so you went from the area you parked. It was about a half mile. Most of it downhill. You crossed on several logs, a fast-moving creek. And then you almost immediately climbed an elevation about, I would say it gained an elevation about 60 to 70 feet through some switchbacks and things like that. Well, once you got over the hill there, a cabin came into view. And cabin doesn't really do it justice. It was for most people, it would be a full-size home and everything. Don't picture an 8x12 cabin when I say that. It was a decent size home, 2-story, all wood construction. Very rustic looking, but even extremely modern. And there was power was via a generator. At the time, they didn't really have any alternative energy other than that the generator ran pretty much all the time when they wanted power up there. No running water, no commercial equivalent of a toilet, no septic, any sort of thing like that. So this is where I was staying during the time period they had brought me in to offer some training for them and to do some consulting on their setup. Well, not being one to really snoop around, because hey, we all respect each other's privacy, or we should in this, and it's a mark of an immature person or a thoughtless person to not do that, right? So, but being curious, as we should, and all that good stuff as well too, I began to notice that okay, maybe they just took me in some oddball winding way. Of course, we're flatlanders down here, so 480 or whatever we are, I believe it's 457 or something above sea level is altitude for us. That's altitude at our retreat. But now we're getting into areas that were, 4,000 or 5,000, feet above sea level and all that good stuff, and going up and down those hills. I wasn't used to the hills, So I thought to myself, all right, well, that's no problem. I've, carried gear further than this. That's not a problem. Just figured, okay, well, they took me in some obscure way, to preserve the integrity or the OPSEC of their retreat. I don't have a problem with that. That's good. I expect that. I expect people to think like that. But by the second day there, sitting out on the porch after, the day's work and training and everything was over, I started looking around and I thought, where is the road to this place? And, glancing around and, having a little experience tracking and things like that, saw some old trails and everything that perhaps a logger or somebody had used, but not in, I'd say 10, 15 years. All right, well, they didn't get in that way. How are they, you suppose they just walk here? Was this cabin just here? Let's see, they said they've held the property for such and such years. This cabin's relatively new. I can tell from the materials, how they look, how certain things, all that good stuff. So at one point, after a good bit of familiarity was developed, I just asked them flat out, I noticed there is no road to this spot right here. How did you guys get all of this material for this full-size house here? And I'm thinking, okay, there's a lot of people in this group. Maybe they did something crazy, had a helicopter drop it in or something like that. Okay, I could see that. It's a stretch, and come to find out that the 80 to 90 people in their group actually carried every single piece of building material and every single piece of equipment that was used at that cabin or at that house all the way up to there. Again, approximately half mile, downhill most of the way, then, the last couple hundred yards gaining in altitude 60 to 100 feet. That is a hide, all right, because outside of the noise from the generator and things like that, if you were not innately familiar with that property, you would have no idea it was there. There was a tree canopy over the top of them, over the top of the cabin and everything of the structure. There was, again, no roads in whatsoever. The trail that you followed down could have easily led you in 6 different directions. At some point, the faint of heart would have given up on the trail because of the distance involved and because of the fact that, when you look around and you go, I don't see any power lines, I don't see any sort of infrastructure, there can't be anything back here. Great hide location, and that's exactly what that is, and it was a hide. Most people, as far as, UI and most everybody else, are not going to go to those sorts of extremes. Now, I will say this, that hide location, or that cabin, whatever you want to call it, was also at the time then not used on a daily basis as well. It was used very, very regularly, but not as far as, dude living there, type of thing, which is what we eventually all want to get to with our survival retreats. Why? Because we don't want to be in, have a retreat in, New England and be in the lower Carolinas when the stuff hits the fan, on work or whatever. We want to eventually get to the point where we live at our retreat full time, if that is at all possible. And of course, as we've discussed before, done properly as part of our planning, we're not just planning thinking that, the stuff's going to hit the fan and, ruin our life because of that nonsense. We're going to plan so that, if something happens, we have this place and we've done all these preps and all that good stuff. But if it doesn't, guess what? It's a hell of a good place to retire. And since you've worked on the place a little at a time with cash over, 10, 20 years, whatever of your life, then when it's time to retire and, maybe the market's back up in 20, 30 years in the suburbs or wherever you're living now, you sell that home and, hopefully it's all profit because you paid off your mortgage or whatever down there, and that's money to live on at your retreat. So, again, a good retirement plan as well. Anywho, the hide type mentality or style with the retreat, great option, but not really doable for most of us, okay? The very fact of that the whole concept, the whole strategy of the hide is just that. It relies on total secrecy, relies on complete noise, light, litter discipline, all of that. Means that it would be next to impossible to have animals. Okay, Robert, you've told us before, rabbits are quiet. You've raised rabbits for 20 years. Why not rabbits? Well, you could do rabbits, but, you want to get down to really brass tacks of it, well, there's smell involved there as well, too, and rabbits can make some noise. They scream like, to high holy heaven, and, and they make some noise sometimes when they're breeding and various things like that. The hide I look at it more as something that, you use as a fallback position. Your retreat is compromised, or perhaps it's a good distance between, where you normally live to your actual retreat, and you set up just a concealed, hidden position somewhere on a few acres, midway there or wherever you can. And it's just basically, it's treated more as a laying up position, or a sniper hide type position than it is a place to really make it long term. Now, depending on your strategy, where you think you're going to make it out in and stuff like that, have an ex-friend that, he put a small 4-foot diameter culvert shelter in his backyard in suburbia. And of course he thought he, did it all nondescript and nobody knew about it. And of course, in suburbia, that's rarely ever the case. But his plan was to essentially just let the die-off happen. If it did happen, when the stuff hits the fan, and just hide there until, the first wave died out or whatever. And you see that happen. You see that, people planning that. I think it's a little shaky. I think the problems with that is, it's not going to be like on all these disaster shows or Falling Skies or whatever, where there's never a damn vehicle on the road. It's just smooth sailing, and they just they're getting out and everything's fine. And I think there's going to be wrecked cars everywhere. I think there's going to be ambushes set up. Again, if we're talking full collapse, that's the sort of thing that we at least need to plan for. If it happens to be smooth sailing, and the worst that happens is your blender doesn't work and your maid doesn't show up for work or whatever, well then great, sunny days, happy times, happy. But if it's full on Mad Max, well then you've at least planned for that, you've mentally prepared for that, versus the hardship of not being able to run your blender or whatever. So the hide concept, good idea. We can take some of the concepts from that, just the overall secrecy and things like that, and the some of the camouflage factors and that. We can take that and roll those into part of our hybrid type design, and we should as well. Our retreat should never be thought of as an area where we're going to, be the headquarters for the, New American Resistance Army or any sort of thing like that, because that's going to bring scrutiny our way. All right. Also, it's not going to, shouldn't be a place where we barter out of. Everybody's got this little fantasy, this little Mad Max fantasy that they're going to, stand out at their gate and, barter ice to the Eskimos, and they're just going to die to get it, or whatever, or the unprepared sheeple are going to come and get food from me, or worse yet, liquor and cigarettes and 22 ammo, about the last three things you'd ever want to barter with anybody, but people don't think. You don't want your retreat to become a center of commerce, or a center where people understand this is where resistance comes from, i.e., the New American Revolution, whatever type of thing. You want to keep things on the down low. All right. So again, we can take those concepts from the hide and use them towards our hybrid. We talked a little bit before about the fire-based concept. Again, takes a specialized group to be able to pull that off. I've helped build some really cool temporary, fire-based type structures that would be the best thing you could actually call them, as a fire base. They worked great for, groups of 20 to 25 that were, mainly, early 20s males, few females, not a lot of children, used to living ruggedly, things like that. Defensive as all get out. They would, the bad guys or thugs or whatever, they wouldn't even bother, in a true hardcore type fire base position. Again, stands out like a flippin' sore thumb. Big drawback there. Another big drawback is because of the very nature of it, pretty much everything is put into defense and or offensive operations. So therefore, you're going to need mountains and mountains and mountains of, freeze-dried food and dehydrated food and storage there. And again, that in itself, creates its own problems as well. Very little chances to really get any store of any amount of self-reliance, self-sufficiency going in the fire-based type of concept as well. The homestead type concept is exactly the opposite. Very, very big on self-reliance, on food production, possibly power production, things like that. But oftentimes with the homesteaders, they don't put a lot into defensive considerations. Or it's your standard, normal prepper approach that, well, I have 2 guns, I shoot once or twice a year, and, I took that one NRA basic pistol class 7 years ago, so I'm good to go. No, you're going to die. You're probably out of shape, you're not training enough, you're not getting out and doing some of these things, you've never attacked your own retreat from the concept, from the standpoint of somebody sneaking in, or how would I jack my own retreat? You've never been willing to bring others in and say, okay, listen, you guys play op for here. I want you to spend the weekend. I'll, pay you or whatever. And there's consulting services. We've done that before for folks as well. Other people do that, I believe, also, to where they come in and they say, okay, this is what I do right here, and this is, and guys, you should see the look on people's faces when you sit there and you spend a couple days with them, and then, you get to know them a little bit, or, you just watch them for a little bit and get to know them, and then you turn around and you say, okay, all right, well, what do you want me to do? Okay, you want me to evaluate your retreat security. Okay, all right, well, let's see, just give me a piece of paper. Here's a thumbnail sketch of how, I would probably attack you. And 99% of the time, it's things and ways and methods that no one's ever considered. They've thought about how they're going to turn away the old lady with the little kids that is going to come to the gate and beg. They've thought about how, the human mass zombie wave attack is going to be fended off, but they've never thought about truly unconventional attacks that that people, a lot of people would run on them. So again, that's something, if you can get an expert to come in and do that for you, great. But that's something that you can begin with just on your own. Crawl around your outside perimeter, see where the vantage points are, see where you would take your shots from. All right, now guess what that is. You make those into a little layout map, and your first job is to start negating those positions, or leave a few good positions. Why would you leave a few good positions, Robert? I got to ask. Well, because there's various things you can do to trap them in those positions. Maybe make the position not as good as it looks, maybe that rock is fake, that they think they're using for cover. Maybe maybe they're in a crossfire right there, and they don't realize it because they haven't seen the other hidden positions that you can shoot from. Maybe it's covered by seismic or passive infrared, like a MERS type setup. Where you're going to know right away this is where they're at. Maybe there's some sort of device. You can put together after the fact that can be used to cover that area. Any number of things like that. I've even heard of crazy stuff like people putting mirrors on like you'd find in a parking garage on the backside of cover areas like that. So you have several options there. You can negate them by getting out there with the bulldozer and smoothing out the high spots and filling in the low spots and various things like that. But you got to get out and put that work in. You got to get out and crawl around that outer perimeter and play the bad guy and see, okay, where could I shoot at y'all? Where could I take these shots? Just understanding of some of the weaknesses of people in your group. Okay, well, this is a nice bunch of church people right here. They're not going to turn away a child. They're not going to turn away, an old lady or something like that. Okay, how do you use that to your advantage? Because guess what? Other people are going to do that, guys. So these are things you have to kind of think about. We tend to just think of all the superficial type stuff when it comes to retreat defense. It's usually you can kind of run down the 10 or so really ridiculous things like, oh, I'm going to plant
brambles on my fence because, everybody hates getting stuck with a bramble and, that will deter any attacker.
Bravo Sierra it will. All it will do is, as they grow up and as they, in the green time of year, it's going to help conceal an attacker. It damn sure isn't going to stop them from getting through your wire. And when you got, Bobo, Uncle Jimbo or whoever that doesn't have a lot of experience up there manning the OP because it's, day 10 and, you can only do so much on your own. You're out of energy drinks or 5-hour energy shots or whatever. And you give him some quick training and he's, doing a halfway job or doesn't know what to look for, guess what? That little bit of green there, concealing him, concealing that scout or concealing that sniper or whatever through the wire is going to be a hell of a disadvantage. It's going to greatly outweigh the whole, I just put some brambles on there and people are just going to run from that, Guys, if you're going to attack somebody's retreat, you're not going to go in naked or with a loincloth or some ridiculous nonsense like that. You're going to go in with clothing on. You're going to probably have gloves on, things like that. Some brambles and that, all that's going to do is piss you off. It's not going to stop you. It's not going to... Anybody who's determined enough to make an attack on your retreat and to kill you, to kill your family, is not going to really give two craps about, having a couple spurs in them from some blackberry bushes. Come on, get out of here. All that's going to do is help conceal them. Okay, where does this come from? This comes from what? There's that damn word again, experience. Why? Because you sit there with your group people, and you sit and when you set up your positions, and you do a weekend where you run, your guard duty all weekend, where you have other group members try to sneak in. You find this stuff out that way. If all you're doing is just reading this crap regurgitated on the internet by other people that have never done a damn thing, you're not going to know that those ideas are stupid. You're not going to know that it's not really that good of an idea to run brambles and various things that, block, add concealment on your fences and that. Why do you think when you go by a military base that has a lot of, cyclone or chain link type fencing or even the local prison, that they don't have crap like that growing up in there? Because they want to see the bad guys too, It's not about, the determined prisoner who's making a jailbreak is going to he's going to get a thorn in his side and go, I give up, let me go back to death row. Get out of here. Anywho, my little rant for the day. We'll get back on this a little heavier next time around as well. We're flat out of time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for putting up with me. And if you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button on survivalreport.net. Thanks, bye.